So, good morning, everyone. We are here for, I think it's the second FME Summer Camp webinar for this year. So today, this is going to be all about web data and reporting workflows. So today we have myself, which is Jen, and Laura as well. So this is actually us at Summer Camp ready. So I don't know how many people saw my tweet this morning. We've already been ziplining. We are ready to go.
Had to get in the right mindset for today's webinar.
Yeah. So how are you feeling after all that ziplining yesterday?
I'm actually a little bit sore.
Yeah. It was a lot harder than it looks, I think, especially we had to climb over like rope ladder grid things and then like hold yourself up until about halfway across I realized you can sit in the harness thing, and that made it so much easier. Yeah, it was a good afternoon. And we also have a few people ziplining on the QA today. So we have Holly, Sienna, and Nathan there. So if you have any questions during the webinar, you can use the questions panel in the webinar tool, send them across, they'll answer them. If there's any good ones or ones that are coming up quite a few times, we can answer them at the end as well. So should we start with reading data from the web?
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So I guess anybody that was at the World Tour this year would have noticed that these transformers were new. We talked about them on the World Tour. So we've got new connectors. So we've got the Salesforce Connector, the HDFS Connector if you're working with Hadoop, and also a ProjectWise Connector. So do you actually know what the ProjectWise Connector does?
Yeah, I've never actually used that one, but it works with the Bentley's, it's like a project or file management system. So it lets you list all the files up there, upload new ones, download ones that are up there, and interact with those and bring them into your workspaces.
Okay, sounds pretty good. And then I guess we'll talk a little bit about the Salesforce Connector in the next slide. But one of the connectors that was added new in 2018, I still really haven't seen anybody use it, is the Pinterest connector. So it didn't make it onto the slide. I picked some more serious transformers to go on the slide. But if anybody has found a use for the Pinterest connector, chat us in the comments, because I'm actually really curious to see what people do with that. So one of the sort of applications we've been doing in-house with the Salesforce Connector is we use Salesforce like quite a lot here. So Salesforce is just a sort of CRM, customer record management system. And if anybody's not familiar with Salesforce, so we basically like all our support goes through there, all our customers, and anyone as well that applies for a job here, that gets put into Salesforce. So we have co-ops, I think every term we get co-ops. Mm-hmm. So I think we have quite a few people that we take on, and we also get a lot of applications coming in. So Sam in HR is having to sort of go through Salesforce, review all of the applications, decide, once she's like read their resumes and cover letters and things, decide if she wants to shortlist them. If they are shortlisted, she then needs to go through, download their application, so their resume and their cover letter, sort of download that, print it out, and then go and give that to the hiring manager. So actually doing that in Salesforce, because I actually watched her do this a couple times, it's very clicky and a lot of effort to sort of go through, find all the attachments, then download them. So we were trying to find a way that we could do this with FME. So using this, you can use the Salesforce Reader or the Salesforce Connector, which allows you to put so-called queries in. So you can just tell it to bring back from Salesforce all of the records for a specific job application that have been shortlisted. So that then returns those applications, and it includes a link to attachments, which you can then put that link into the HTTPCaller to download them. And then if you don't want to go and open all of those files manually and press print, we added a system caller at the end of that, which took in the sort of downloaded path for the attachments, and then would send those automatically to the printer. So all she would need to do is run this workspace when she wanted all of those applications downloaded and printed, and then she would just have to take them to the hiring manager instead of spending quite a bit of time going through and downloading them all manually. So that was quite a good use case.
Good time saver there.
Yeah.
So now we're going to take a look at the HTTPCaller. So Jen mentioned it just now, using that to download the attachment files from a URL in Salesforce. So this one I think is one of my top 5 favorite transformers in FME. It's a pretty versatile one, so it's super handy when you're dealing with any kind of web data sources, especially if you're dealing with REST APIs and you need to make calls to those and gather data and bring them into your workspaces and use it.
So should we have a go connecting to an API?
Yeah, let's try it out. Yeah.
So let's see if I can find. I have so many things ready for this webinar. Here we go.
Lots open. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so for this example, we're going to use the HTTPCaller and connect to the FME server REST API.
So what do you want me to do on here?
Yeah, so let's take a look at a call that we could use and in the HTTPCaller. So I think one that's a good one would be in the repositories. We're going to get a list of all the repositories or all the workspace folders that are up on our FME server instance. So this is a good one, that get repositories.
Okay.
So if you scroll down, you can grab the URL from down there.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this will be the URL we'd like to hit, and we'd like to get a list of all the repositories on FME server. So in our workspace, we can put in an HTTPCaller for that. And we'll need to add a creator right at the beginning to kick that off. Basically always need that unless you're inserting it into an existing workflow.
Okay.
All right, let's see what the HTTPCaller has. So in here, it has basically all of the options that you'd expect from any kind of REST client. So we've got the request URL at the top and the HTTP method, so 2 key options. So we can take a look at what the methods look like.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got all the usual suspects. The get and the post are 2 big ones, and you've got everything else, delete, patch, options, put, and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which one are we going to use now?
So for this one, it's just a simple get. So we're going to get some information from the server.
Okay. And then that thing I copied from the API doc, I put that in here.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So there we are. So you can see we've got 2 options, the limit and the offset inside the URL there. And that's fine. We can leave those at their defaults.
Okay.
So then there's a few other options we can set in here if we wanted to. So we've got things like the query string parameters and the headers. So if we wanted to put, say, an authorization header inside there, we could add that from in here. For this, we won't be doing that because we've got other ways to authenticate.
Okay.
So let's scroll on down.
Let me move that up.
And then we've got some options for dealing with the response. So if we want to take the response that comes back from the server and put it into an attribute, or we could choose to download it directly into a file.
Okay, so that's what we were doing with the Salesforce one, is downloading it to a file.
Yeah.
Not an attribute. Yeah, I don't think I'd want a PDF as an attribute.
Yeah, it'd be a little unwieldy.
Yep.
So in our case, we're getting some JSON data that we'd like to use in our workspace. So we'll keep it in an attribute. So we can keep that called response body.
Okay.
And then down at the bottom, we've got some HTTP client options. We're not going to set any of those, but you can see got things like cookies, SSL certificates, and timeouts. So if you're dealing with maybe you're hitting an endpoint that's a little bit slow to respond, you can increase the timeout to make sure that FME doesn't give up on it before it's done. And then the last thing we'll do here is use authentication. So if we check that box there, we can authenticate with FME server. So there's 2 options. So we could use the basic authentication, or we could use a web connection. So let's use the web connection.
Okay.
And this will work for any of the supported web connection types. We have things like ArcGIS Online and GitHub and Dropbox and all that fun stuff.
Yep.
So we're doing a connection to FME server there.
Yep. So that's my connection that already works.
Yeah. So it's got the username and password saved in there.
Yep.
So we don't have to do anything. So we'll click OK. And let's try running this and see what we get. So you're using that new caching option in there?
Yeah. So this is actually one of my favorite new features in 2018, I think, because then, I mean, this workspace isn't very big, so it doesn't show it off very well, but you can choose to run like to this point, you can run from this point. And I think with HTTP callers, if you're connecting to an API that maybe has sort of like a limit on how many times you can make requests, otherwise it sort of blocks you out. If you just run from here, it sort of caches this transformer and we'll just send those features off so you don't have to keep hitting the API. So it's pretty handy.
It also makes it faster if it's a little slow to come back to you, so you don't have to re-hit every time. Yeah. So let's click on that little magnifying glass and see what the response looks like.
So that magnifying glass just then opens up the data inspector so we can start to see what data we've had back.
So a bit of a mess, but that's all JSON in there.
Yeah.
So we can use some extra transformers after this to start parsing that out and putting this into a more usable form.
Okay.
So I think we've got a slide on that coming up.
Yep. So if I can find the webinar, here we go. Oh. There we go. Oh, in a minute we have a slide. Getting too excited. So that was an example of connecting to a REST API. But I know there are some people, we sometimes see them coming on live chat or on the community Q&A forum, that want to know how to connect to SOAP APIs. So we actually have a really good knowledge base article that Dave Campanis did on connecting to SOAP, which is actually what I followed for this example to be able to know what to do. But I'll just show you in FME now how we can connect to SOAP API. So if I can find, those going black when I want to try and find my workbench is not helpful, but here we go. So we're going to use FME to connect to this SOAP API, which is actually for the National Rail Inquiries Service in the UK. So these sort of tell you what trains are coming in at the station, whether they're on time, whether they're delayed, what the previous calling points are, the next calling points are, etc. So what we're going to do here, I've got a HTTPCaller already in here with a creator before it, but SOAP's a little bit different to REST, so you can't sort of as easily look up what you need to send or put in the HTTPCaller to make that request, because I think SOAP uses something, you get this WSDL, which sort of gives you a description, like describes, I think, how the web service works and like what it's expecting you to ask it, basically.
So it tells you kind of how to format the queries kind of thing if you want certain information.
Yeah. So what I've actually done in here is, in this body section, uploaded a bit of XML, which is sort of like making that information to give to the API endpoint to tell it what we want to get back. So in this case, I need to send it a token so it knows I'm authenticated and allowed to use this service. And you can see this one, I want to get the arrival and departure board with details request for a specific station. So I've parameterized these, so when I run this workspace every time, I'll have to put these in. So I could change which station I want to look at, maybe. And then like how I knew what to put in here, I used a tool called SOAP UI. So in here, you sort of get this WSDL link you can put inside SOAP UI, and then it lists sort of like all the different requests you can make. So for this one, I'm just going to do the get departure board with details. You can click on the request, and it comes up here and tells you this is what I basically put inside that body section of the HTTP caller, and then this is the URL that I'm putting at the top for the request URL. So this way it knows where to go and what information to ask for. So again, because this is bringing back XML, I'm going to leave this as response body, and then we can run this, and we'll do reading. So that runs, and I can go and have a look at what that response is coming back. So again, a bit like that JSON that was returned from FME server, this isn't exactly the nicest to look at to work with. So what we can do now inside this workspace, we can add an XML formatted transformer that sort of will make that XML look a lot nicer. And there is a JSON formatter as well. So after that FME server request we just made, we could have added one of these after as well. So inside this formatter, I'm going to pick that this is coming from an attribute, so it's coming from that response body. And then we're going to leave this as pretty print XML, which is going to just make it look a lot nicer. So again, I can choose to run to this transformer. So you can see it's not going to run the whole workspace. It's going to take from this line in. So you can run that. And this is giving me a new attribute, this XML output attribute. And you can see now that this is a lot nicer to look at and a lot easier to understand where it's coming back from this service.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see we've got some locations. We've got a train going to Penzance. We've got a train going to London Paddington. And all of that information is coming back in here.
So do you know which information you actually want to use in your workspace from this?
Well, I can have a quick look and try and kind of work it out, but it isn't the easiest to do. So I can see up here, everything that I want is under this LT7:service element. So I'm going to put that inside a fragmenter transformer. So what the fragmenter does is then, because I've just got that one big block of XML, the fragmenter is going to split that up based on where I tell it to make different features from it. So, and again, like for all of these sort of JSON and XML transformers, there's normally the opposite one for the other one, if that makes sense.
Or the equivalent.
Yeah, that'd be a better way of saying that. So inside this fragmenter, again, this is coming from the attribute. I'm just going to use that XML output from the formatter beforehand. And then inside this elements to match is where I'm going to put that LT7 service. And then that should split this up and give me lots of different features every time there's a new sort of service going into Reading Station. So press OK, we can run this. You can see, yeah, that's given me 10 features this time. We can go and have a look. But again, I guess this still isn't very useful. What I would really want is to be able to see attributes at the top for the different things that I'm interested in. So any ideas how we do that?
So you probably want to use one of the flattener transformers, perhaps?
Yeah.
Or
we could add a flattener transformer afterwards. But in the interest of this, no more than 10 transformers in a workspace thing, you can actually flatten inside the XML fragmenter. So you've got this flatten options thing down here. So I'm just going to go in here and enable flattening, and then we'll see what happens.
You get 2 in 1 in that transformer there?
Yeah. So that's gone yellow now because something has changed inside this transformer, so the cache is invalid. So I'm just going to run this again. And we'll take a look at what's come out. So now when we click on these, you get this really long list of everything that's sort of like available, I guess, to be flattened or exposed as attributes in this list down here.
So that's everything inside that service element tag, basically?
Yeah. So I think just for the sake of this demo, I might pull out things like the ETD, which is the estimated time of departure. We've got the STD as well, which is the scheduled time of departure. So luckily this one is going to be on time, this train. That was lucky. So if we want to bring these attributes out, inside the fragmenter now we need to expose them at the bottom. So you can just open this one and I can type in ETD and STD. And these need to match what was in that inspector view a moment ago. So if we run this one again, you can see, if I drag that across, that those attributes are now available and I can work with them.
Nice. So this transformer is a really good example of really the key is knowing your data when you're setting this up. Because if you don't know what those attributes are called or what you actually want to get from that XML, it's going to make it tricky. So you need to see what your data looks like and really understand it in order to be able to parse it properly.
Yeah, and I think that's why I really like the formatter transformer, because it makes it really easy to go and find, like see which elements and things you want to bring out of your data.
So do you need to have that formatter in front before you do the fragmenter?
I think you don't need to. I mean, what I would sometimes do, which I don't know if I should probably say this, is like copy and paste it into a text editor and then save it as XML. So it would look nice, just so it was easier to split up and break up. But I find doing it in the formatter now, especially with this feature caching, a lot easier now to just quickly look at things.
Just simplifies that process of visually spotting what's going on.
Yeah. So this is the slide you mentioned earlier. So I think we've covered, apart from the extractors, we've touched on the fragmenters, the formatters, the flatteners, but inside the fragmenter. So what does the extractors do?
Yeah, so those ones are nice when you get like huge chunks of JSON or XML and you just want a little piece of it. So those give you more control over the queries that you can set inside the transformer just to pull out the little pieces that you want instead of having to deal with everything at once and then removing it after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, one thing as well you can do is if you're sort of using these HTTP callers, connecting to a lot of APIs, and you're sort of doing this over and over again, or maybe you're connecting to a really popular API, you can wrap all of this up inside a custom transformer and then put it up on the FME Hub. So this is a transformer that Nathan built last year, which connects to the US Census API underneath. So instead of sort of recopying all of those transformers, he's bundled it up into one. This is up on the FME Hub, so anybody can use this transformer. And there's also a blog as well if you want more information on it. And he should be on Q&A, so if you have questions about this, you can always chat and he can answer them for you. And I guess one of the other things, if people aren't aware of what the Hub is, it's sort of like a place you can go and upload web connections, you can upload custom transformers, you can also upload workspace templates. So I think most of the workspaces that we're using in this webinar today, we've put them up on the Hub as templates, and you can actually find them inside Workbench. So it was actually really funny the other day when we were publishing them up, Brian had Workbench open and they were appearing in his templates to open thing really quickly.
Oh, wow.
So that was really cool.
So it's real time there. It updates as they're put up.
Yeah.
Okay, so switch gears a little bit. So we've talked about the HTML or the HTTPCaller transformer. So now we'll take a look at another kind of online web data set. So we're looking at ArcGIS Online. So in particular here, we're going to use the ArcGIS Online reader to read attachments from an online source. So do we have that tab open just to show? Oh, there it is. Okay, taking over control here. So here we've got a data set that we've completely made up. So none of this is actually real, but this is all hosted on ArcGIS Online. And so you can see it's a graffiti reporting app, so people can come in and report where they're seeing graffiti in the city of Vancouver. So we have some attributes in here with the description of what the graffiti was and who reported it and when. And down below here, we also have attachments. So the users can upload a photo of what they're seeing. So in this example here, just a picture of the graffiti on the wall next to some payphones there. So what we want to do is read in this data and create a report from it so that our cleaning crews can go out and find these areas where there's graffiti and handle them. So we're going to look at the first part of this, and we're going to look at reading from ArcGIS Online and pulling in those attachments and looking at how to use the attachment data that we're pulling down. So let me go into Workbench. I'll let Jen open it up for me.
Yep. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, this one's the blank workspace.
Yeah, just an empty workspace would do.
Okay, let's use this one.
Okay.
And delete what we did before.
Perfect. So I'm going to add a new reader. So I'll use the quick add option for that. I'll type in AGOL. Here's my reader. So I'll set up the connection to that graffiti features service. So I'll set up my connections. This is the web connection, similar to what we used when we connected to FME server there. It just stores your credentials and allows for authenticating without having to re-enter your username and password every single time you come into FME. Let's locate the feature service we want. So hitting an online source here is a lot of data. I'll just use the filter and look for graffiti. And I'll grab this one. And that's it. So I'll hit OK. We'll add in the feature type there. Perfect. So we've got our graffiti feature type, and we have all the attributes about the reporter, material used for the graffiti, and the location and all that. But you notice we don't have the attachments yet. So there's an option on these feature types where you can tell it to include the attachment data. So the ability to include attachments in ArcGIS Online is set kind of on a feature service by feature service or feature layer basis. So we set the option to read them on a feature service by feature service level. So I'm going to say yes here. And the other key for getting the attachment data is to go into Format Attributes and expose these attachment attributes. So you can see with the curly braces, those are actually a list. So each item stored in ArcGIS Online can have multiple attachments associated with it. And so we'll read all those as a list on each feature. So I'll read in that data now. I'll just take a second. Since we're caching, we don't have to do this again once we've done this. Perfect. So I've got 7 data points there. I can open it up. So I've got each of the point locations of where the graffiti was located. Yeah, I can change the color of those so I can see them. Make that bigger. There we are. So on each of these points, you can see all the attribute data in there. And I can see the attachments. So each of these will have only one attachment in our particular application. So we know that there's only ever going to be a list size of 1. I can see they've got JPEG, so it's image data that's attached. And this is the actual data stored in an attribute here. So it's just a binary blob that represents that image. So that's great, but probably not super usable in this particular form. Here's my workspace. So we've got a transformer that can help us handle that. So we've got the raster replacer. So in this case, since it's an image, we know it's a raster type data. So I can attach this guy, drag that in there. So for format, everything's a JPEG, so I'll set that. And then my blob attribute will come from my ArcGIS Online attachment data. So I'll just set that to 0. I know there's only 1, so I don't need to do anything special with the list. And I'll choose to remove that attribute so I don't have that blob hanging around for the rest of the workspace. And I'll rerun that. So you can see it was a lot faster this time. And then we've got all of our images now. So we've pulled that out of ArcGIS Online and we've reconstructed the image data that we've pulled down as binary. And now we're able to use this within our workspace. So we can create some fancy reports with these images. But we'll leave that for now. So just looking at the reading side. So we'll come back to this later in the webinar.
So where is Firefox? There we go. So you actually added, sort of exposed your attributes on the feature type in the workspace, not in the reader parameters when you were adding it. Like, why did you do it that way?
Well, either way will work. The reason I did it on the feature type in this workspace is because I was only working with the 1. So I only needed to do it there. If you expose it on the reader itself, it'll expose them for all of the feature types that you import. So if you're dealing with 10 and only 1 has attachments, you might want to do it afterwards.
Okay, yeah. So I guess if you wanted to add more layers in this layer list and you had lots, you could do that all at once then, basically.
Yeah, so just save some time later on.
Okay. So the next one we're going to have a look at here is how you can extract HTML or information off websites. So this is using CSS selectors in the HTML extractor transformer. So do you know what a CSS selector is?
No.
Oh.
What is it?
I was hoping you would answer that. So a CSS selector is kind of like an identifier for something, I guess, in your code, like in your HTML, that tells you how and like how you want to style it. So it means the CSS can find it and apply the right styling.
So sort of like an ID for that item.
Yeah. So if, like in the beginning, I remember reading this, the help doc for this transformer is really useful because it has a link to like a W3 schools page, which kind of explains a little bit more about CSS selectors. I think this is the one case where I actually had to read the help for a transformer rather than just trying to figure it out myself, because that took a little while. So I'll show you a really good way of finding what those CSS selectors are. And then we'll show you how to put these inside the HTML extractor transformer. So I have this open here. So we're going to be using the HTML extractor to bring back some information from this 10 largest lakes in the world website. So what we're going to do is bring back the images and then sort of pull out the name here of what each lake is. So sort of just looking at this page, you have no idea what those CSS selectors are going to be. So you can right click on a page and inspect it. And this will open up that developer sort of tools information page. So I've actually set this to the elements. Now it's on a split screen, it's hard to find. But this is sort of all of the HTML that is behind this page. So as I'm scrolling down this list with all these elements, you can see different areas are being highlighted blue as I go down, which makes it really easy to find which bit you sort of want to pull out, because as you scroll, you can be like, okay, so in this main sort of content main text bit, this is all highlighted blue, and these were the bits I wanted to pull out. You could start to go down here to try and find the right CSS selector for what you're after. So I actually I don't know if it counts as cheating, but to make this easier, I've installed a toolbar, which I can never remember the name of, but it's something like CSS Selector Helper for Chrome. And then once you turn this sort of plugin on in your browser, you can see I've got some, if I make this a bit bigger for now, I actually have some extra things in here which you wouldn't normally have if you don't have this plugin installed. So I've got this sort of like breadcrumbs at the bottom, which takes me through the CSS selectors to find the right bit that I'm interested in. And then I've also got this CSS selector sort of toolbar help thing here. So if I find a title here for one of the lakes, am I scrolling up or down? So for this bit, that 10 Great Slave Lake bit, I can press get selectors here, and it sort of gives me the trail on how it would get there, and I can click on the H2, and I can see that there's 14 sort of elements on this page that fit that selector, and you can sort of toggle through and see which ones they are. So if I just put this H2 CSS selector inside the HTML extractor, these 14 results that it's going through here is going to be what I'm going to get back inside that transformer. So because I know there's 10 lakes, I mean, it's 10 largest lakes in the world, and I've got 14 here, I want to try and reduce that number down a bit, so I have to do less filtering in the workspace. So you can sort of click on other selectors in this list, and it sort of helps you narrow it down a bit. So you can see now I've got 11, and I can keep going through, and I'm happy with that. I'm going to take these two, and then I can copy the selector to clipboard, which means now when I go inside my workspace, inside this HTML extractor transformer, I can just paste in here, and it copies that CSS selector in. So it makes it really, really easy. And I know before I had this toolbar, I was like scrolling through the HTML, a lot of trial and error inside Workbench, but this, like, I know what I'm getting out because I've tested it in here, and it just works. So there's a few in here that I've put in earlier. And like I mentioned in the help, understanding what these mean, like with a space or with a triangle bracket thing, I should really learn the name of those. But the help for the W3 Schools link explains how you can build your selectors up to make sure that what you're typing in, if it's got a parent, you need to be a bit more specific, you can write those in. And I've put that URL in for that 10 largest lakes in the world website here. I'm bringing that from a URL. If you did have it coming through as an attribute, like you could put a HTTPCaller before it to bring back all of the HTML, and then you would choose to do it as like content from an attribute. But I'm just going to read this straight from the URL. And then because I know there were 11 results coming back, I can return those as a list attribute so I get all of them rather than just the first one. So if I run this now, we can have a look at what that brought back inside the inspector. So you can see here, clicking on it, because it's lists and I haven't actually exploded or exposed even those parts yet because it's a list, you see it in this sort of panel in the inspector. So you can see it has brought back all of those values, and this one for the lakes, which was the one with 11 in and all those titles, you can see it has brought back those 11 that I was seeing inside that toolbar in Chrome. But what I'm interested in here, I want to bring back the images. So if I make these a little bit bigger, you can see that this has got the source URL in here. So it's a JPEG, and this you would append to the main URL for that lakes website. So I want to be able to pull this out, and I'm going to download those images into my workspace. So to begin with, I'm just adding a list exploder here. So I'm taking each of those list elements for the lakes and turning them into attributes. So I'm going to get one for each type of lake there is. And then just to test, because it's bringing back those 11 things from their website, and I only want the 10 that are actually lakes, I'm just testing in here to make sure that it begins with a number at the beginning of that. So there's quite a bit of regular expressions in here. I actually quite like regular expressions, and they work really well for this actually. So now I'm happy where I've just got all of those lakes. I need to bring back the images, but it's actually sort of bringing that whole line of HTML in. So it's got the open and closing tags, all of that information, and I just want to pull out that URL. So I wrote this regular expression earlier in the week or last week. So trying to remember what it actually does is tricky. But if you really like regular expressions, maybe you can tell me. But I think it's basically, it's replacing things in two attributes to get rid of, I think, for the lake titles, it's getting rid of the digits at the beginning, any white space or any character up till the end of it after a hyphen. So when you look at that title, it's like 10. Great Slave Lake -area. So I only want the name of the lake. And then I've got this pipe in here. And then after that, it's removing all of those bracket things to make sure I only get after the source and what's inside those quotes to make the URL. Anyway, if you really like regular expressions, this is a challenge. You can go and look at this afterwards, but it works.
We have a nice regular expression editor in FME.
Yeah,
right,
we do actually.
Test those.
If I can. This is actually really useful. I really like using this. You can put it in there, and if it matches what you've put in here, it goes bright yellow. And then so I'm just replacing, I'm finding all of the things I don't want and then replacing them with nothing, basically. So I end up with what I do want. And then inside this image fetcher transformer, this sort of basically goes out to the internet. If it's got a URL in there, it goes and brings that image back into FME. So these ones were JPEG, so I've set that here, and then I'm building the URL. I've got the sort of Lakes website here, and then I'm adding what we just pulled out for that source afterwards. And then I've got an inspector transformer with a group by, so it should bring back all of those images and have them as their own sort of toggleable things in the display control window. So if I run this one, let's hope that this one works.
Yeah, 10, that's a good sign.
Yep. So you can see now I've got those 10 lakes come back down the left-hand side, and I can toggle them on and off. So this is that lake. So you can see it's brought back all of those images into FME. So, yep.
So now that you've got this set up, you can run it over and over again, just in case that updates or changes.
In case any of the lakes change. Where is Firefox gone? There we go. So I guess that's the end of the reading from the web section. And then after this, we'll have a look at reporting. And we might have to talk a little bit faster, which is a shame because there's some good stuff in the second half. But I think we're just going to do a quick poll to see, of those things that we've sort of talked about this morning, which of those are you more likely to connect to?
Oh. HTML and APIs are two big ones right now.
Yeah. So for anybody interested in HTML and APIs, there's actually a course next week. So it's the debut of the FME Server REST API training course. So you can go and sign up for that. Poor Sienna's been working on this for months and months. So I think she's going to be really glad when people get a chance to actually try this course. So that basically goes through how to use the HTTPCaller, connect to the FME Server API, but you can translate that easily to any API. And then sort of how to build custom applications with the FME Server API as well. So it's going to be really good. We did a run through a couple of weeks ago, so I'm excited.
Lots of good content in there, yeah. Okay, so this is the poll results there.
Yeah, so APIs and or ArcGIS Online, 87%. Or reading from HTML is a lot more popular than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
So
that HTML extractor should be very useful for a lot of people then.
Yeah. There is also a HTML table reader or transformer. So if you've got tables, you can bring those in.
I think it's a reader,
easier. Yeah. So let's go back to the slides. So was this you or me yesterday?
In the jungle there,
Yeah, I think we're a bit too far away from the jungle, but it looks like the lizard was there. Yeah.
All right, so we'll start by looking at Microsoft Word. So we added the Microsoft Word Reader for 2018, so it's pretty new writer in FME. So it provides a way to take your data and create a nice report and write it out to a Word document. So pretty straightforward. So we've got an example of showing how to do that. I'll let Jen open that up.
Do you remember what the workspace looks like? Oh, I do, because you've used all these collapsible bookmarks.
It doesn't look like there's any transformers in there right now.
Yeah.
So it's a neat and tidy one. So I'll just briefly overview what's going on in this workspace. So this part here is simple data prep. So I'm connecting to a CSV file showing the location of street food vendors in the city of Vancouver. So it's taken from their open data site, mostly food carts or food trucks and that kind of thing. And then I've got an Excel file showing an area of interest. So I want to know where all the food vendors are close to maybe my place of work or where I'm hanging out for the day. So I've got a buffer around there, and then I'm filtering it out. I'm only grabbing the ones that are close to where I want. And then I'm doing some attribute cleanup and geometry cleanup at the other end. So that's just basic data prep. So that could be really coming from anywhere. In the green bookmark here is where I'm doing all my work with Word. So the Word Writer works in conjunction with the MS Word Styler transformer. So that's also a new transformer that helps you set up all the elements or all the items that you're going to be adding into your Word document. So I've got a whole bunch of stylers. So I have one styler per item that I want to add into my Word doc. So I can see here I've got my styler for the title. So this is what the styler itself looks like. So you can set up a variety of different types of content. You've got headings, images, list items, and tables. So I'm just setting up a paragraph here with the title. So I'm sending some text from an attribute here. Setting up a subtitle as well, and I'm adding an image. So I'm just putting that in from a file. So in theory, I could get that from an HTTPCaller and include that image in my output. So if I wanted to make maybe a Word doc of all the biggest lakes in the world, I could have done that. So that's just setting up some stuff that goes at the top of the page. So I've got a single creator here that's going to send that in. One key to remember when you're working with the Word Writer is that order really matters a lot. So whatever order the features come out of each of these transformers, that's the order that they'll appear in the document. So if my subtitle comes before my title, then that's how it's going to look in my Word. So there's a few things here I can do to ensure that I'm controlling the order that the features come through. So the first one is in my creator, and I have this create at end set to no. So this tells it to kick off before the reader starts reading in data. So that ensures my title comes before my actual data.
I didn't know you could do that.
That's cool. Tips and tricks. So you can say create at end to yes if you want that to go last as well, if you had some footer or ending information to include. The other key here is on this connection. So you see this runtime order pop up. If I right click, there we go. I can set the connection runtime order. So I can decide what order features will come out of the creator in. So first to the title, then the subtitle, then the image, then the paragraph. So I can reorder this if I wanted to adjust that. So one tip there. The rest of the data is being processed in here. So kind of taking up a lot of space in here. So I'm just bringing in all the data. So each of the food vendors, and then I'm building some tables. So you see I've got a few samplers and a tester in here, and these are helping to control the order of features. So again, with the tables, I want to make sure, so what I'm doing in here is, where is it? I'm grouping by food type. So I want one table for each type of food. So one for comfort food, one for other types. So I'm doing that first. And I'm grabbing the first feature from each of the food type groups, and I'm sending that into the header. So I want to make sure the first one goes through so I can create a title for that group. Once that's through, I'll send the rest to the table, and that'll just create a table showing the business name and the location where it is. And then here I've got a tester set up. So if it's the last in the group, then I want to add one more styler and put a space at the end of the table. So I'm testing for last in this attribute creator here using this advanced attribute handling. So in here, to test if it's the last in the group, I'm just looking at, so these are ordered by food group type. So if the current food type is not or doesn't match the one that's coming up next, that means it's the last in the group because the next one's from the next group.
Okay.
And so then I'm setting that to true, and then otherwise it's false, so they are in the same group. So that's how I'm controlling the ordering there for the output. So I can run this workspace and create my Word doc here. So I've just connected that to the Word writer. The writer itself is very simple. There's no real options inside. So you can set the feature type name if you want to change that, and you can change the name of the file that's created. That's about it. Most of the power comes in those stylers.
Okay.
I can open that up quickly. And there we go. So food vendors in Vancouver. I've got the ones selling Asian cuisine there, the comfort food. You can see the space between each, and they're all grouped together.
I wonder how they decide what is comfort food.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. Anything that doesn't fit in another group.
Yeah.
Or anything that involves potatoes and duck fat. Yeah, so that's it for the Microsoft Writer.
Cool. So I guess one of the other ones as well that we also added is Microsoft PowerPoint. So you can, in pretty much the same way as you're doing with the Word writer and the stylers, if you want to write to PowerPoint, you use a PowerPoint styler, because again, the PowerPoint writer is like not too complex, I don't think. You would just basically do and control everything inside the PowerPoint stylers. So we actually played a fun game on World Tour. So I'll see if I can find this one. So nope. Yes, this looks like the right one. So this workspace here is writing out to PowerPoint. So if I just go to the beginning, what this is doing is pulling back information and flags in different countries from the CIA Factbook website. So you can see here a few transformers we've already talked about today. So we've got the HTML extractor in there. I believe there's an image fetcher. I think this workspace is up on the hub as well. So if you want to have a look at what's going on, you can download that and have a look in a bit more detail. And then again, the connection runtime order here is really important. Because we were playing this as a game, we wanted to send a flag image to like the first slide. The second slide would be a hint, sort of showing you roughly where the country is in the world. And then the third slide would be the answer. So I think we do this 7 times. So we get 7 sort of countries to guess. And then we're sending this into a feature writer, which is set up to be the Microsoft PowerPoint format. But this one actually here is being written out as a .pps. So what the PPS does is open it up in presenter mode straight away. Whenever you open this file, you can't like open it as a normal presentation. So when you're playing this as a game, you obviously don't want to have to open the presentation and then like make everybody turn around while you present it, because they'll see the first couple answers. So this gets around that. And then what we've got here is a system caller that opens that PPS automatically. So I think if you've set PowerPoint to open by default any PPS or PPT files, this just defaults opens it up in PowerPoint straight away. And then one of the other things you can do for the PowerPoint writer is set a template. So if you don't do that, it looks kind of not great. But if you run it and it has the styler in there, or the template, sorry, it makes the slides look really nice. So we won't actually play the game now, but we'll just see that open. Ta-da! See, I didn't touch anything, but you guys don't know that because you can't see my hands. But that opens the presentation automatically then, and then you can start to play which country is this. So I actually have no idea, and I don't feel like I've seen that one on World Tour. So maybe if anybody knows in the comments, you could write, and then you get a shout out at the end. I don't know. So let's close out of that one. And what you can also do with this one, if I can find Firefox again, is I liked this game so much. When we were talking about this webinar, I was like, how can we play it live on the webinar? And I was like, we're going to build a web app to do it, but we're not actually going to play right now because I am aware we are running out of time. So you can, on our demos site, go and play Fun with Flags online. So what we do in this workspace behind the scenes is swapping out the PowerPoint writers to basically writing out JSON, and then using FME server to stream this back to a web application. So you can type in, be awkward if I got this wrong now, that's Sweden, and you can go through, and at the end it tells you your score. So that's just a little bit of fun.
Did you set that up with one you knew?
With one I knew? No, I did not. That's just really lucky I knew that was Sweden. Yeah, so that was the game. Outputting to Excel. So I guess we can cover these ones really quickly. And there's a couple of different ways you can get Excel to look nice. So I was determined for this webinar to come up with a nice looking Excel example. So no offense to whoever at SAFE made the one for the World Tour, but it was like a really random color scheme. So poor Holly sat there for ages making this color scheme for Excel, but it actually goes really well with the slides. So it actually looks pretty good.
The green theme going on.
Yeah. So what this workspace is doing, I actually have it open. We can go through fairly quickly. Again, lots of HTTP callers inside this workspace. This is going off to the FME server API and bringing back information. So bringing back like my machine key, my license information. So it will tell me if my license is, if it's coming up to expiry or has expired, it will give me like a red or an orange color. If it's good and I've got loads of time left, it'll be green. So inside this Excel styler here, you can see you can apply formatting to cells or to rows. So this one is happening just to the cell and changing the cell color. But you've got a lot of things you can control in here, like the word wins. You can set your borders up, you can set your background colors, your pattern styles, your text alignment. If you change the text orientation, it makes the cells look really funny in Excel. So for the longest time, this was set to like a really small number. And we were thinking, I thought it was a bug, to be honest, because that one Excel sheet would look really wonky. I don't even know how to describe it, but anyway. So if you set text orientation, be aware it might look weird when it comes out. But then what this report is doing, there's a lot going on here. So it's bringing back all of the schedules, all of the workspaces. And you can see on the slide, when I open this Excel spreadsheet in a moment, you can see it's sort of color coded by repository, which the workspace is in. It sorts them by when they were last published, and also tells you if there was a schedule and if it's enabled or disabled. So what actually this workspace is doing, we've set this up to run on FME server. So I can go back to Firefox, and I've got FME server open here. We can go and run this workspace. So actually what we're thinking is this kind of thing, if you're running reports, you probably would want to kind of schedule them. So maybe every Friday you might want to give your server admin this report to say what's been going on in their server in the last week. So you've got some parameters in here, the host name for where your server lives, who you want to send the email to, who it's coming from, and where that Excel file lives. So if I run this workspace, I should get an email appear in my inbox that has that report going through. So I don't think this one takes too long to run. So we can watch to see if that comes through immediately. This is one, as soon as I got in this morning, I was like, this is going to get risky, but look, it works, yay. So you can then click on that spreadsheet as an attachment, you can download it and run with that. Yeah, so we can open it. And then you can see here, I've got my license information. So actually, I've only got 1 day left on this license, so I should probably get a new one. It's time for renewal, that's orange. A list of all of my workspaces on there and the schedules. So if they're disabled, they're red. If they're enabled, they're green. It tells you how often they run. A bit of repository breakdown. So this is just using the chart generator transformer and putting this onto a sheet, which is nice. But if you wanted to use the charting in Excel, you could use an Excel template to do that. And then this is also set up on FME server to run as a data download service. So you can kind of run that on demand then as well.
Yeah, so we just take another look at another example of dealing with Excel. So the stylers are great if you want to automate kind of coloring cells based on certain kinds of data going through. But with Excel, there's a lot of power in how you set up your spreadsheets. You can set up different kinds of charts, what are those called, named ranges inside and all that kind of thing. And you can't really do that very easily in a styler. So I'm going to show an example just taking, so it's building on the ArcGIS Online example that I had with the graffiti report. And I want to use a template this time and insert my data into that template file. So where's my template, Jen?
That is a really good question. Do you actually want to see the actual template?
Yeah, I'd like to open that up quickly just to show.
Let's see if we can find it. I wonder if it's recently opened. No.
Oh, okay.
Let's have a look. No, now is not the right time to spin a colored wheel, Mac.
All right, so maybe I won't show the template to start. So I can show what happens in the end anyway. So my workspace is that, which guy is it? This one?
Yes.
Aha, perfect, right. So I've got a template that I've built up. So it basically creates a nice looking form in Excel. And I want to take my graffiti data and insert it into different cells inside that Excel spreadsheet just to fill in that form. And I want to do this so I have one sheet per graffiti report from my source data set. So really the key here, so I'm pulling in the ArcGIS Online data and then dealing with the different types of information that come out. So here I'm taking that attachment data, and down here I'm creating a little map. So I'm using the Google Maps API with an HTTPCaller to create a raster map showing the location of the report. So that's using the Google Maps API there. And then down here I'm taking the attribute data. And the key in here is in the attribute managers. So in here I'm setting this XLSX column ID and row ID and setting that to specific values. So this lets me insert that particular piece of data into a specific cell in my template. So I'm doing that for each of these. So I'm putting each of these into a different location in the template just to fill it in. And then I can run this and I get my work orders automatically processed. So I ran this already, so I won't have to spend time doing that. Uh-oh. We're in some trouble with Finder here.
No. Well, I mean, it looks nice, the output report that's created.
I think we've got a picture of it in our slides, so we'll just use that.
Yeah, we
then.
do. Let's go back to Firefox.
There it is. So this is what the report would look like. So I've got my graffiti image here, and I've automatically placed that into this particular cell, and I filled in the client's data and the description of the incident as well as the map. So I've placed those into individual cells. So good news is this is up as a template on the FME Hub. So if you want to try this out for yourself, you can run it and see what it looks like.
Cool. So I do know it's basically 9 o'clock. So if people don't mind sticking with us for maybe an extra 5 minutes, the next couple of things we're going to talk about is HTML reports and PDF writing. And then if anybody has any questions at the end we want to discuss. So I do apologize for running over. I was really excited about this webinar. There's just so many things that I kind of want to show.
It's hard to cut things, yeah.
Yeah, and then we just added more. So, so HTML report generator, I think, is definitely in one of my top 5 transformers. I remember as soon as this came out, I think it was 2016. This was really exciting. So what this allows you to do, if you don't know how to write HTML code, or I guess I probably could, but it's going to take me an awful lot longer than using this transformer. So the report generator transformer lets you add things like titles, maps, tables, images, text, all out into HTML. So it's really easy and quickly you can create a web page. So this is a web page here that we've made. Taking that SOAP data from that National Rail Inquiries API to make this web page that when you choose a station, it shows you all of the routes of trains going into that station and whether they're on time or delayed. So let's hope this works. So we can actually run this because it's writing out to HTML. I don't have a web server set up on here. I can get that HTML page to be streamed by FME server. So because this workspace needs some data, so it needs all of the train routes for the UK and all of the sort of station points, I have a project set up which has all the data and the workspace in it. So, and we're gonna keep, every time I want to find her, it doesn't like me. So here's my project. I feel like I should just give up with Finder at this point. This is not liking me.
Laptop is not cooperating.
No. So luckily, this one's just running on Docker on my laptop. So this, had it worked and Finder was working, this would have been cool. But what we actually have is an example. Yes, this is actually running off a different one of our cloud instances, so I don't have to worry so much. But basically, I've chosen some of the stations. These are all places that we did the world tour in the UK in April. So you can choose your station. You can see it's returning back for Cardiff Central. You can see all the green ones are where the train lines are on time. The red ones are where the trains are delayed. So you can see that one doesn't have the delay reason. There was one delay reason the other day where the track was too hot, so the trains couldn't run.
Oh, wow.
I think it's really hot in the UK at the moment. So you can click, and I guess, yeah, the HTML chart report generator allows you to do pop-ups on the map as well. So every time I'm clicking on one of these, it tells you where the train is going. So Manchester, Piccadilly to Tenby. I actually go to Tenby on holiday like every year. I don't know if you cared, but
No,
yeah, that's
cool.
nice. But that train is delayed, so shortage of train drivers.
But
And
it's
then
still on time.
Yeah, maybe it was delayed. I don't know. And you can see a list like the arrivals board at the train station down below. So what I was really hoping to show in here, had this worked, was that we could have had a look at the workspace on FME server with the workspace viewer. So we don't have to open that inside Workbench if you want to see what's going on. You can use the workspace viewer to do that. So, and then I guess all of these is doing every time I'm choosing a train station, it's calling that direct URL link to stream this HTML back. So again, I guess if you want to see how this works, you can sign up for the REST API course next week. Oh, nope. Keep forgetting I've added hyperlinks on my images in here. So yeah, this is sort of a basic or quick look at what we did. There was a lot of geometry work and network work in the beginning to get the shortest route finder to go the exact route down the train. So I was pulling out all of the previous and next calling points from that SOAP API to make sure the shortest path finder would go along the right route. And then the HTML report generator by default only gives you one color for the polygons or for the lines on that report. So I was using a string replacer just to tweak that HTML after it come out the report generator transformer to say if it's on time, be green, if it's delayed, be red, basically. And then this, I think, is actually one of my favorite transformers now. I didn't realize it was so good until we asked Nathan while I was away at Esri UC. I was like, we need this for the webinar. Can you make a PDF? Using the PDF page formatter transformer was a bit difficult, especially with all these tables. So we basically took that food vendor's information that Laura showed earlier as a Word doc, and then we put that through the HTML report generator instead of all of the Word stylers, and then put this through this HTML to PDF transformer, which is up on the hub. So you do need to download the WK to HTML executable and point to it from this transformer, but then it takes those HTML reports and then outputs it in PDF. So this was so much easier and quicker to get a PDF report, and it actually looks just as good as your Word one. Screenshot there. And this workspace template is up on the hub as well, so you can go and have a look at that afterwards.
Okay, yeah, and finally, last but not least, writing out to business intelligence software. So we don't have a demo for this one in particular, but I think it's good to point out. So a lot of the demos we've been showing, especially when we're writing to Word docs and Excel files and HTML pages, it's fairly static. Once you get the data into that report, you just have that report to look at. So with FME, we also have writers to bring your data into software that's basically specialized for being able to visualize data. So it kind of provides a way to take your data and look at it. You can create charts and graphs interactively, so you can click around in your data set and look for trends and really get a good feel for the overall data itself. So it's great with high volumes of fairly complex data. So one example is something like Qlik. So we've added a Qlik writer to FME 2018. So you can take your data and write out to Qlik QVX format, so you can bring that directly into your Qlik application and use that to create fairly complex and nice looking visualizations from that. So we also have writers for things like Tableau. What's the other ones that we work with? We don't write
BI? Microsoft BI?
Yeah, Power BI.
Oh yeah.
So we don't write directly to that one yet, so not into a native format for that, but we do write into formats that it can connect to, so it can connect to different types of databases and that. So we have the ability to take your data and import it into a form that these tools can use.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I guess it's a shame we couldn't actually show it very well, or at least like the railway trains example. But a lot of these reporting, you're probably not going to want to be running these manually on your workspace and trying to remember like, oh, every Friday I must run this report. So what you can do with FME Server is it really starts to allow you to automate those things. So you saw with the Excel report about information about your FME Server, You can schedule that to run maybe every week, and it will automatically just email you a report. So you don't need to be sat there with Workbench open, checking the calendar, remembering when to send it. FME Server can do that for you. And as well, like with the trains example, and even running that report with a data download, you start to make it really self-serve. So basically every time you go to that website and choose a train station, that's just sending that request to FME Server and doing the work for you. It's not like I'm sat here running and Laura says, oh, I want to look at what's going into London St. Pancras right now. I would have to sit and run it, generate that HTML, put it on a web server so she could view it. Now she could just use that website and that URL and just get FME Server to bring data straight back. So, and it's all like folder watching as well. If you've got people submitting data that you want to generate a report from, if they're uploading it into a folder, it can watch it and then just generate those reports automatically. So it kind of makes them a bit less static and a bit more automated. So yeah, in summary, so thanks for staying with us if you are still watching. It looks like at least some people are still watching, which is nice. And then I guess shout out to Thomas Wicks, who apparently got the correct flag first, which is Zambia. So I did not know that. So I guess we've talked about quite a lot today. There's a lot to pack into this webinar. So a few different of the connector transformers that are new, different readers and writers you can use, like the Arctis Online reader. We didn't really mention it too much, but the HTML reader. And I guess the HTTPCaller as well, which is probably one of the most powerful ones we've talked about today.
Yeah. We also looked at the different ways of creating reports and the different formats and writers that will support for that. And all those styler transformers, those are super powerful as well.
So I guess based on all of those formats that we've kind of just been going through, are there any formats that you guys are likely to use? So you can pick all of those that apply. Oh, that stupid Finder's still open.
Strange. Just waits for the webinar to misbehave, right? So it looks like Excel is out in front there.
Oh, I think as well, like in those charts Dale keeps tweeting about, I think Excel is giving Shape a run for the money. So I'm not too surprised about that.
Interesting. There we go.
Lots of HTML as well and Word actually.
Yeah. And business intelligence. Yeah, it's a good mix of everything.
Yep.
Very cool.
So yeah, I guess the next summer camp activity is on August 22nd, which is outdoor to indoor 3D and venue mapping. And I was trying to work out what activity these guys are doing for this one, but maybe they're just camping this time, staying in their tent, indoors in their tent. Maybe they're going to map where their tent is pitched. I don't know.
Guess you gotta find out.
Yeah. So are there any good questions on the Q&A that we could address?
And if there are any more questions that you have, you can submit those to us now so we can stay online and answer a few questions live if you'd like. So there's one, they missed how we work with ProjectWise. How's that done?
So I don't actually have ProjectWise, like any connection to ProjectWise. No, I can't type on here. So that's a shame because I wanted to open up that transformer. The demos were going so well and when we practiced it.
Yeah. Well, it's a transformer called the ProjectWise Connector. So in there should be a bunch of options to set up a connection to your ProjectWise, is it a server or ProjectWise, whatever it is, and it lets you decide what you want to do with your files. You can list what's in there.
This is not working for me today.
Do you want to switch presenter to me? So I've got my workbench working.
How? Let's change that. Ooh. No, it'd be awkward when I accidentally make an attendee the presenter. I'm like, if you pick you have to demo the ProjectWise Connector. So there you go.
There we are. Here I am. Okay. So it's the ProjectWise Connector here. And it just has options in here to decide what you want to do, set up your account. So it's through a web connection here. So it's a Bentley ProjectWise, put in your URL and your username and password, and you're good to go. So you can upload new files, list them, download, and delete from here. Any other good questions out there?
So someone's asking, what is the plugin for Chrome that I use to pull CSS selectors? And I think it was the CSS Selector helper for Chrome. But I think there's a couple when you sort of are on Google Chrome and you look for plugins and you sort of type CSS Selector help. I think it does come up with a couple that it says I've installed. And I can't find any that I've installed that match that exact name. So I keep trying to find the exact name, but I think if you search for CSS Selector helper for Chrome, some should come up, and then you could have a play with those.
So it's out there.
Yep. Let's have a look. Could you write something that prints and deletes the PDF and just calls out? So yeah, so I guess after we were downloading or creating that PDF and it's saving to your disk, you could run the system caller, which would send those to the printer. And then I don't know how a printer works, but like I don't know whether you had a system caller straight after that other system caller. So after it does the print command, does the delete command? Is that going to be too quick, or does the printer know straight away? Like, does it cache it or?
Yeah, that's a good question. It goes, yeah. Have to do some experimentation with that.
Yeah.
So if you're worried about the timing, you could use the decelerator transformer, wait 2 minutes, and then delete the file to make sure it had time to print.
Yeah. Yeah, so I reckon you could do that. Do you know if the ArcGIS Online transformer works with Portal as well?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure if that one supports attachments yet. So we have a separate reader for Portal. So it's the ArcGIS Portal feature service reader. I don't have a Portal instance to connect to, so I can't double check if it has an option, but we can follow up if you're interested in reading attachments from that, but we can for sure connect to Portal instances.
Someone else was asking actually about printing, like, can you write to a printer directly? I don't think you can. You would have to write to a file and then send the file to the printer. I don't think you can write to printers directly.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. It all depends on how printers work, really.
Yeah.
If you have a good understanding of it and you know what kind of format they expect things. But yeah, I would think that it would be file first, then to the printer.
Yeah. Someone's asking the Excel workspace available on the Hub. Yeah. So I think most of the workspaces from today are as the Hub. If you look for the user FME lizard, that's what we've been publishing them under. So this should appear there, like near the top of the list. So yeah, I think that's most of them. Let me just have a look at the bottom. Yeah, oh, someone's asking, can we use workspace templates like in previous versions? Yeah, workspace templates haven't changed. But actually now with feature caching, which is nice, you can save caches in your template as well as just the data. So if you want to send it to like someone, they want to reproduce something, they can just run it instead of having to read from like your database or something. So you don't have to create new accounts or share your password.
That's handy.
Which is nice. So yeah. So I guess if anybody else has any questions or they go away and think of something, you can post your question on our Knowledge Center Q&A forum. Which is good. You can also add Laura or I to help you answer your questions if you're stuck. Or we're also going to be on live chat, so you can also pop in and ask us any questions there. So yeah, I think we're good.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for attending today.
Yep, and staying with us 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes past time. So thanks. Have a good day, or evening, I guess, for a lot of people. So.